I have two kids, my biological son Lou from my previous relationship with Ingrid, and my stepson Gerald from my current wife Jasmine. I saved two equally sized college funds for both Lou and Gerald. My rule for my boys was that even if they did not want to pursue higher education, the money was still theirs. I recommended that they use it for a down payment on a house or car, but they were allowed to spend it on whatever they wanted. Lou chose to use his fund to go to college. He was only able to pay off his first 3 years using his fund, as he chose to attend a very expensive private university. He graduated 5 years ago, but is still staying on a strict budget to be able to pay off his loans. Gerald says he's not interested in pursuing higher education. Since Gerald is doing very well for himself as a real estate agent, he wanted his funds to stay in the savings account, as he's considering opening his own agency someday. Lou recently expressed that he's exhausted from spending years on strict budget, and that it's been draining for him to watch practically all of his college peers splurging, while he's still coming to mom and dad for a meal. Lou asked if he could have a part of Gerald's fund because he needs to pay back his loan within a few years, and he knows his brother isn't planning to use his own. Lou argued that because the fund was still collecting interest in the savings account, it would all probably be regained by the time Gerald decides to use it. I pointed out to Lou that if he believed Gerald would be okay with this, he would have asked Gerald directly. My answer was no. They each received an equal fund to spend how they wanted. If Gerald wants his fund to stay in his savings account and continue collecting interest, then that's his decision. Lou argued that it was unfair because he needs to pay back his loans, whereas Gerald doesn't have college debt. But I reminded Lou that he had been accepted into more affordable universities and did not have to attend the expensive private school that he did. Jasmine and I sat him down well before he made his college decision and made it clear that we would not be financially helping him with his college beyond the fund. He chose to attend the expensive school anyway. Lou spoke to his mother about this situation. I can tell because Ingrid made a post on Facebook accusing me of choosing my new family over Lou and keeping funds meant to benefit my children in a savings account while Lou's swimming in college debt. Mutual friends and acquaintances have reached out, explaining that they know I'm not biased towards my stepson. If the roles were reversed, I would have told Gerald exactly the same thing. However, they say I should treat Lou and Gerald with equity rather than equality, and because equity is based on needs, I should consider helping financially with Lou's loans. Am I the a-hole for wanting to keep my foot down on this? Not the a-hole. If he wanted his school to be completely paid for, then he should have gone to a cheaper school. You don't owe him any money at all. You are not obliged to pay for any of his college. Not the a-hole. This was a very fair arrangement that Lou was aware of. He's unhappy with his decision and doesn't want to take responsibility for it, but he's an adult and can figure it out. You were very generous to have a fund ready for them. Not the a-hole. You fulfilled your promise to both your sons. Your bio son chose the more expensive school, in spite of you explaining other options to him. Your stepson chose a different path, and his fund is earning interest. Frankly, your bio son's more expensive school has not benefited him since his graduation. Otherwise, he would not be struggling. Keep your foot down. Equity versus equality is just an excuse for feeling entitled to money that is not theirs. Your decision is the right one. Backstory. My mom and dad split up when I was 12, and I for one was happy that they were separated. They were not bad people, they just weren't the right people for each other. My father still hasn't been remarried, though he is dating someone right now. Don't really like her, but it's my dad's decision. My mom started dating a year after the divorce. She met my now stepfather. He had a son who I became quite close to, considering my biological brother went to live with my dad while I lived with my mom. So when my mom announced her wedding, we were all excited. So then stepfather's son becomes my official stepbrother. Okay, we're done with backstory. On to the real story. My stepbrother and his girlfriend of 3 years were getting married. Now, girlfriend just happens to be my best friend, so I was extremely excited for them. I was chosen to be the maid of honor, and my biological brother was the best man. We were all that close. My stepbrother's best friend, A for a-hole, was one of the groomsmen. I never really liked A because he was a total creep and always tried to hit on me when my stepbrother wasn't there. Stepbrother is quite protective, so I didn't tell him, or he would have been arrested for M. Also, I can stand up for myself. Anyway, once A finally got a girlfriend, he stopped annoying me. So during the planning of the wedding, nothing crazy happened apart from the normal wedding stress. We invited almost everyone we knew, and it was going to be great, or so we thought. The big day arrives, and everyone is ecstatic. The ceremony was beautiful, and everything went great. Then the reception came. It was going great. The groom and bride, plus the bridesmaids and groomsmen, were all seated at a table at the front of the venue, while the guests were sitting in front of us. So they were facing our table. Everyone was giving speeches and enjoying the food. Then out of nowhere, A stands up and takes the mic and says he has something important to say. We're all confused as he had finished his speech, but let him talk. I wish we hadn't. He asks his girlfriend to come up to the table, and I already knew where this was going. He starts a speech on how much he loves her and how they were meant for each other. She's smiling, but I think she didn't want this to happen now, of all times. He then kneels down and pulls a ring out of his pocket and asks her to marry him. She says yes. They start running around, showing people the ring. All the while, my best friend looked like she was going to cry. My stepbrother and biological brother were whispering to each other. I couldn't hear what they were saying. Finally, my mom gets up to remind everyone that this was her son's wedding and that we should stop talking about someone else's engagement. Everyone was quiet. Suddenly, we hear this banshee scream. The girlfriend started screaming and crying, saying my mom had ruined her special day. Then A began screaming at us too, claiming that he did nothing wrong. They got kicked out in the end. My brother lost his best friend that day, but he didn't really care because that idiot lost all his friends. I'm also going to be a bit petty and say they can't even have a wedding because of virus, so hope they're happy. What a bunch of jerks to try to steal someone else's special day and say they ruined my special day. Well, it's common sense not to do that crap. That ranks right up there with the jerks who announce a pregnancy at someone else's wedding or baby shower. Total jerk move. The surprise proposal was pretty trashy and inconsiderate, but to then go on to complain when people ask them to settle down and go on with the main event. Dang. That's entitlement with a capital E, and you really gotta wonder what the weather is like on their planet. My brother and brother-in-law recently passed away in an accident. I, 26 female, am now the guardian of my niece, 4, their only daughter. In their will, I receive about a third of all their money and estates, and the rest went to my niece. This includes 2 sets of jewelry that were family heirlooms, passed to my brother-in-law through his mother. 1 set was given to me, another set to my niece. For background, my brother, 38, had been my guardian since he was 19 after our mother passed away. Our father left us when I was 5. He met my brother-in-law, 48, sometime after that, and a year later, we moved in with him. My brother-in-law is wealthy and owns a few businesses. He raised me like a daughter, and I was very privileged growing up. I'm currently doing a PhD abroad, and they are paying for everything. My brother was able to go to culinary school like he had always dreamed of, but never worked after graduating. My brother-in-law was low contact with his family because they didn't approve of him being gay. My niece was conceived via surrogacy and is biologically my brother's. A week ago, some of my brother-in-law's family asked to meet me. They'd like me to give them the family heirlooms, the jewelry sets. They said it's what his mother would want, to keep the pieces in the family. I told them my niece is his daughter. He raised her and gave her his name. No further discussion will be held about this matter. Then they asked for the set given to me, since I was nothing but his sister-in-law. They went on about how the jewelry sets, theirs and my brother-in-law's, shared a bunch of gemstones that were crafted together, and their own sets are not considered complete now that one was given to an outsider, me. I refused, saying my brother-in-law saw fit to give the set to me, and I will hold on to it. The relatives left, saying they hope I do the right thing. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give the jewelry to them? Not the a-hole. He had legal possession of them, and he chose who to leave them to. If he wanted them to go back to his biological family instead of the family he created, he would have put that in his will. You're honoring his wishes. They cut him out of their lives, so they don't get to claim anything of his. Not the a-hole. He could have left the jewelry to the cat, and they couldn't have done anything about it. Also, give them the jewels? What the heck? Do they think you're a charity or easily taken advantage of? You don't have to give them anything. Do not try to let them browbeat you or force you to give anything to them. There's a reason brother-in-law left them nothing. Here's a bit of advice. Take it for what you will. First, do not give them anything. Second, get the jewelry appraised and insured. Third, if your jewelry set holds emotional value to you, keep it. End of story. Fourth, do not give away or sell 4-year-old niece's jewelry. It is hers. And lastly, if they approach you again and you are not emotionally attached to your jewelry, then offer to sell it to them at a premium. They're the ones invested in this transaction anyway. These people treated your brother-in-law wrongly for likely decades. They're already a-holes in my book. You don't owe them anything. Not the a-hole. His mother had passed the heirlooms to your brother-in-law. He willed it to you and his daughter. The fact they originally demanded your niece's jewelry as well shows they don't consider her family. There's a reason he went no contact. The right thing to do would be to keep his wishes and remain no contact, so they don't indoctrinate your niece later into their BS. Sister-in-law, 48 female, has 3 kids, 12 female, adopted kid, 14 female, and 15 female foster kids. Me, my husband, and our 3 kids, 12 male, 11 female, 8 male, plus 31 weeks pregnant, live on the same property as my sister-in-law, separate houses, roughly 150 feet away from each other, same driveway. It was sectioned off this way years ago, following the passing of my husband and sister-in-law's father. Each inherited half the property. Recently, my sister-in-law got a new job that requires her to do overnights, 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., and her husband, 48 male, is basically useless. He won't drive or take the girls anywhere, doesn't work, doesn't cook, etc. So instead of hiring a babysitter, She has fully expected me to assume responsibility of the girls while she sleeps all day, taking them to and from work, as well as taking her adopted kid, and usually at least 3 of her friends, to softball practice and games. I did at first because I knew she needed help, but then it got to a point of her expectations being ignorant at best, and me being fed up. Like her calling and asking me to go drop her girls off at the park, or bring them to a friend's house, or trying to convince me to take them to the beach with me and my kids every single time we went. Or an issue with them feeling entitled to using our kids' expensive trick bikes or skateboards. My kids are in recreational skateboarding and biking contests. I started saying no about a week ago, but she never stopped asking, despite me telling her I wasn't doing any more favors. I would take the girls to work, but that's it. Other than that, it's her job as a parent to step up to the ducking plate and figure it out. Well, she came banging on my door yesterday because earlier in the day, her adopted kid asked me for a ride to softball, and I said no, bringing my kids to the beach. And she was pissed. You'll really let your niece miss out on her opportunities to bring your kids to the beach? In short, yes, I would. She called me heartless and cruel, and it was at this point that I said maybe she should stop taking in kids that she's just going to pawn off on everybody else, because I'm tired of being her savior when she's a failure at parenting. She hasn't been to a single game, even before her shift change. She took off crying, and my husband says I was too harsh. Sounds like you said what needed to be said. She didn't seem to really understand you telling her that you weren't doing her any more favors. It's too bad it got to that point of her always expecting you to take care of her kids. But the reality is, you have your own family, not to mention also being pregnant right now. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. In all honesty, if I were you, I would contact the agency where she is receiving the foster care children from and let them know what is going on. Your sister is receiving money to care for foster children. If she's not providing proper care for them, she should not be doing it. Trust me, those kids know what is going on. Not the a-hole. Her husband should be the first one stepping up to help. If he doesn't work, study, or do parenting, maybe she should rethink about their relationship. If her husband works afternoons, nights, sure, they would have money to hire someone, or at least pay you to do it. My wife, me, and our 2-year-old are going on our first family road trip to California. We rotate driving in shifts, but the problem is that when I was driving, my shift fell during the night, and so I was feeling really lonely and bored as I was driving. I'm not someone who can be left to his own thoughts very well, and I need people around me. I thrive on energy and excitement. My wife is a bit of the opposite. She's generally fine with being left alone and can sit quietly for hours and hours upon end. The problem is that around 11 p.m., I was driving and my wife and our son were in the back seat. I was feeling isolated, so I shook her awake, but then our son woke up, and well, you can probably guess what happens next. Once he quieted down, my wife began to quietly blow up at me about how much of a jerk I was being. I told her that it wasn't fair for her to just sleep like that, and it made me feel like a driver. Then she said that she doesn't force me to stay awake or engage with her. But I told her that's a cheap blow, because we're not the same people. And I kept my mouth shut while she was driving because I know she doesn't like distractions, even though it bothered me terribly. So the least she could do is to stop being selfish and help keep me sane. Despite my perfectly logical answer, she apparently got emotional, and then started whisper screaming some crap about how raising one toddler is hard enough, and that she didn't know there was another one in the car who needed his whims catered to at every moment. And at that point, since she got rude, I decided to disengage. Now our whole trip is falling apart, and she's making me out to be the bad guy. You're the a-hole. How can your wife safely drive during her shift if she's tired from staying up and talking to you? Podcast, music, phone a friend, something. Your wife probably carries most of the mental load when it comes to caring for your toddler. The least you could do is let her sleep. You're the a-hole. Play a podcast or music like everyone else and let your tired wife sleep. Oh my dear Lord. You would be kicked out of the car and left alongside the road. I'm pissed for your wife. Why are you acting like a toddler? You're the a-hole.